Everyone take a nice deep breath, please. So I'm feeling guided in the moment to speak about aligning with a new trajectory. Several of you are finding that you are at a new juncture in your life and may even feel like you're at a crossroads and the direction you thought you were going to be going is taking on a different shape, a different nature. You've prepared for several things, but you're feeling like there's something else that is starting to sync up. And the more that you start to accelerate down the path that you're on, that is the right path. But there's more that's wanting to be revealed. And before you can arrive at a quote unquote destination, so to speak, or start to set up shop or lock in this particular trajectory, there are a few other key elements that are wanting to come into place. They're wanting to be revealed. And it's not that you're not still on the same path, it's just that the trajectory becomes a new trajectory because there's more data, more information about what you're really here to do, what you're here to live at this time. And so all of what your journey has brought you to up until this point has been very significant for sure. But there are other elements now that want to reveal themselves, and it's going to allow you to see why things haven't expanded and maybe haven't taken off in the way that you thought at this point they would have, right? And so sometimes you're still trying to do the same activities that you were doing before, but you reach a point where there's something new that's calling you. And yes, you still be doing some of the activities for preparation or setting up or aligning more with this, but the nature in how you carry it out may shift a little bit because it's a different level of requirement for what's emerging. Now, some of this may be a little bit not necessarily difficult to take in, but you having to give pause for a moment and be in a place where you can receive what the next level is or the now level is that's going to carry you into the next level that can reveal to you what this new trajectory is going to be like because you were headed into a new trajectory regardless. But there's, as I mentioned, there's more expansiveness here. In some of the work that I do around trajectory work, helping individuals to come to their highest, if you want to call it timeline or trajectory, so to speak, but also having the opportunity to do some integration of different possibilities. And normally what I take people through in processes is that there are always three primary trajectories that are going to be at your highest benefit at any given moment. And you can make different plans in terms of how certain things can play out, but also within the grids, the trajectory work, leaving room for divine editing, meaning that there could be other elements that will come in that can definitely delight and surprise you. Some may catch you off guard because it's unexpected, yet it's perfect for the experience. So when there's trajectory integration taking place, meaning the opportunity to align more than one path, um, that's something that people have to give pause with because we haven't been conditioned to live in a multi-trajectory way, I should say. So what happens is that we fix a plan out of all the different possibilities that could potentially happen, and some of them will have different elements that if you choose one path, you can't have the other. But in this new expansion, in the way that we are here to live, you actually can embody it all, but it is just maybe at different times. So let me provide a little bit of more context to this in terms of what this could look like. So let's say that you have an interest or you feel called to actually live in two different places, whether it's in the same state or same city, or one could be in a different state, all right? And of course, you can't live, if let's just say for a home, a residence, so to speak, you can't live at the same time in those residences. You can own them, but you can't reside there from a physicality standpoint at the same time. So what that could look like is that maybe you have a trajectory where you're like, I live on this side of town. I've relocated to this side of town, and but I'm going to be doing some work over in a city that's maybe 2 hours away, so to speak. And let's say you own your own business, or that's what you are, planning to do. And but there's going to be times where you don't want to just keep traveling. You don't want to keep commuting. So how can you live the best of those worlds, right? How can you live in both places? Well, you can, because you can have a property or a living arrangement in in both places. And so where it may look like on one trajectory, it has to be just this linear type of experience where you can't have the best of both worlds, but in this expansion in terms of how we're here to live and start living in a very different way, we can. It just will take on a different shape. But when you create in these different trajectories, you create it as if it is a single trajectory. And then you start to align more with one that seems to be, I guess, lighting up more to you. You're feeling more resonance there. At least it's feeling like that's where you should start first. And as you start preparing for that type of experience, then the other trajectory will start to integrate and show you how it's very possible, how it's very possible. And I know this all too well. And I've definitely had to help others. I've had my own experiences where you literally can have home base one and home base two, or different places that are a part of your right now experience that you spend time there, right? Now, there are going to be some times where, let's say that it's a different state. You could possibly be living in a certain area during a certain time of the year, and another during a certain time of the year. So how they say it, when seasons change, different people migrate to different places. You can look at it in practicality in that way. But the human experience that we are going to be embarking on more so in terms of new ways of living and being are going to require us to be very multi-trajectory. So when you are now expanding and aligning with a new trajectory, that new trajectory could present multiple paths. It could be a multi-trajectory type of experience, or it could start off that way and then sort of come into this cohesive type of experience. So you potentially could have to live out different variations of a trajectory before there's a congruent alignment, if that makes sense. So this could be quite a bit to take in, but we're here to do things in a more expansive way and not to live life in terms of the programming and matrix conditioning, so to speak, of how we need to be. We need to understand that it's time to come into a higher alignment of our true divine nature and power that can allow us to do exceedingly above and beyond anything we can ask, think, or imagine, right? It's according to Ephesians 3:20 in the Bible. We can do the impossible when we allow ourselves to go beyond ourselves. And what happens as this journey or so is ensuing is there's so much new awareness and, like I said, new information. And that's why sometimes it can feel a little difficult to solidify something that you feel is what you've been working towards. Now, I know this all too well on so many different levels. I have actually had to complete different education requirements at different times for different degrees, working on more than one degree at a time from different universities. And initially, my path didn't start out that that was what it was going to be. But another path integrated, and it required me to start completing some courses somewhere else. And then I discovered, and this has been a long time ago, I discovered that I could get a secondary degree with this particular university. So then that created, it was already a path that was created, um, that was required for me. And then it opened up and expanded. So, and these institutions were in two different states. One was in Tennessee and the other was in Georgia. And so things worked out where I was able to do some completion of things online, uh, but I still had to do some residence requirements. But my path worked out where I was able to complete both. And they actually aligned where within a few days, I had completed my graduation requirements for both institutions. Now, one I wasn't able to walk from for another year, but everything had actually been completed. So my path was multi-trajectory in that way that caused me to have to do these different things. And everything for that aligned for that to be so. And the same even with some living situations where I would spend a certain amount of time, so many months in a home-based state, and then come back to a secondary home-based state where there was more time spent, and my activities during those times were for specific things. So I've been living on this path for quite some time. And that actually, it's interesting. I have been on this path. I want to go back to the education piece. Before I started doing the dual program, in terms of 2 degrees from a different, 2 different universities, they were Bible colleges. Before that, actually where I was completing an associate's certification program while I was preparing to go to Bible college. I was completing a program in the state of Alabama. All this stuff feels like it's so ancient because it's been it's been a while. It's been a long time ago. And I was completing a program there, but then I was guided that I needed to actually go ahead and start school in Tennessee. So that required me actually leaving my full-time position, my full-time job, earlier than I was, planning to, and also being able to wrap up my requirements for that particular school that I was attending. And I was going to be graduating, but it was going to be the following semester. But things aligned where I had to actually complete and finish up things so that I could go on to this next venture. And once getting there, I could see how everything aligned and why I needed to do that, why I needed to go ahead and not wait until let me finish here and graduate here, and then I will go on to start my additional studies and start that new life in that new state. Yeah, things didn't quite work out that way. I completed what I needed to. I moved on, and then I was in this new experience. And then when I was in this new experience, as the first semester there was ending, I had to go back for my graduation in Alabama, right? And I had moved on to Tennessee to go to Bible college. And then again, it started expanding. And the story I just shared with you about me being on this path, and then another trajectory opened up for extensive education, and it was a requirement. And when I say requirement for my divine assignment. But I couldn't see that coming. Um, and that was not in the plan, so to speak. But that is what began to happen. So I've lived in so many different scenarios in terms of these multi-trajectory, multi-path experiences, and having these integrations and seeing how they work out, how they work out. And so this assignments that you will have, divine assignments, your multi-mission type of experience, because that's where we're headed in terms of our own life's purpose evolution, is having this multi-trajectory type of experience. So again, you'll see these things show up in different ways. And when you're called to this, everything will align for you to live out those types of scenarios, so to speak. And I learned many, many years ago, I remember receiving wisdom and insight around this particular focus, that alignment is not always convenient. And so for some who may think, "Ah, well, I would just want everything right where I am or in close proximity. I don't want to be going here and here for different things." But again, in this newer expansion, so that we aren't limited, so that you aren't boxed into the traditional matrix, in a sense, is that you'll be called to different places. So you can look at it as if you are being required to travel, and sometimes you're going to be staying in different places at different times. And there's assignments for why you need to be there at those specific times, and you have to get comfortable with that. So as this new alignment is taking place, you are, let's say you feel that you're at a standstill right now, or there's movement around what's taking place, but there's no real full clear direction in terms of how you start to execute to bring this into fruition. And again, that's because there's something else that's emerging, and typically it's going to be another trajectory, another path. Now, that path could also look like a different, let's say, another income stream. And not necessarily that means you're going to have a job here and a job there from a traditional standpoint. If you are, let's say, an entrepreneur and you already have an online business, but it could be that there's another trajectory, another path that's aligning for you to consider another path, another path. And sometimes when that path starts revealing itself to you, you could have kind of retro reflection of synchronicities, different clues that were indicating that something along this nature could come into your experience, or you see different signs around different things and you're not sure why. And then it starts to solidify itself a little bit more as time's progressing, right? So sometimes even when certain business ventures aren't jumping off in the manner that you would like for it to be happening, it could be that the path is saying, don't get too carried away. Don't get too carried away down this path right now, because something else is emerging that's going to maybe require a little bit more of your time over here than where you currently are. Or it could be that a new dimension of what you're already working on is wanting to come into play. So you have to be mindful how you are being present with the unfolding, right? With the unfolding. So again, when you're living in these different trajectories, understanding that it's all one cohesive experience, but you have to be present with each strand because they actually are different strands that are at least initially starting to form, all right? So if you're currently in the process of moving, and I know what it's like to do a multi-level move, a multi-trajectory move, where traditionally we uh, relocate with a clear intention of I'm moving from here to here, and not that, okay, as I'm moving to this place, but I'm also moving to other places. You know, that's a whole nother level of preparation. And I actually do teachings and coaching and consulting and advisory for that level because it does require that. It's not something people are used to. I have the experience, so I know what it's like to have to plan and prepare to have those multi-trajectory types of experiences. So again, aligning with this new trajectory and being open that there's other potential paths that will be calling to you that will require you to live what could seem like a double life. And when I say double life, not from a negative perspective, but again, it's a multiplication of your experience, right? So this will look different for everyone. And some of you know not maybe not moving to different places and having more than one location, so to speak. But as I mentioned, it could be that there's a path, another path that's opening up. And whether it's an extension of what you're already doing, or it could be a combination, that and something else additional that is now going to be part of your experience. And it's so interesting. I want to go back to my education experience when completing my undergraduate studies and how there were multiple trajectories of education that were coming into play. And if it had not been for me going to the second school, the alignment and awareness for where I was planning at one point to do graduate studies that actually then led me to where I needed to relocate and set up a home base. And then it turned out at that time, the education piece seemed to be what was going to draw me there, but God had different plans. And so that's something we have to be mindful and also allow ourselves to be surrendered to the greater unfolding of what's trying to take place as these trajectories are expanding. That one is expanding, but it's also bringing in alignment for, for something else. I can see so clearly now for sure, even though I could see clearly even in the time things were happening, but it's more expansive now, where there were certain paths again that I started pursuing and I was called to pursue those. And then something about that changed and shifted. And it seemed like that part was going away, but at another time, it realigned and showed up in another format. And that was where I needed to actually complete this part of my preparation and assignment. So I'm going to share an example. When I first enrolled in Bible college, I was doing really a kind of a triple fold experience. I had a double major in Bible and Christian counseling, and then my other concentration was in media communications. And prior, I had a certification, associate certification in radio and television broadcasting, right? And so when I was on the path of pursuing that and I was doing my double major and also studying, what would be kind of my third major in a sense, is they hadn't fleshed that out as a full major at that time. So it was a concentration and a minor, but it was expansive enough to be considered more than just a minor, so to speak. And then they later did expand it to an actual full-on major. So as I'm on this path, life has a disruption. And so I was called away. My father had transitioned. So I had to return to my hometown. And things were kind of in a state where I couldn't return to um, school. And I had a mobile home there on the campus. I couldn't return. My family and I could not return right away. So I was going to have to lose a semester in a sense, and I did not want to lose ground in terms of my graduation and everything. So what happened was this other school came into play where I could do some requirements while I was in town and be able to start completing those. But then what happened was a lot of other things started taking place, and this is all divine. And again, I mentioned that I saw where I was able to actually combine my experiences and get more than one degree. So what ended up happening is for me to actually graduate from the other school in the time frame that I wanted to, I had to actually let go of my counseling major, which I was, really close to completing, just maybe 3 courses lacking the practicums maybe or so. But it actually wasn't meant for me to complete it there. So I ended up having my BS in Bible and in media communications. But from my other school, I ended up getting a BA in biblical studies and minoring in psychology. And then later, I'm telling these stories here, um, for me to complete what was going to be necessary for me with my counseling, that was going to be much more expansive and not just tailored to Christian counseling. My path realigned at another point for me to do my works and studies and complete different levels, multi-levels in that particular field. So the path, again, you start out, but things start to change and everything got expansive to where I was able to really acquire more that was going to be necessary for my path. And it actually did not take me a lot longer to do what I was doing because I had the integration. I'm getting chills just as I'm sharing this. I had the integration of paths. So being able to transfer credits to one place and then transfer credits to another, I had been completing this integration without the realization initially, obviously, because I didn't know that was going to all be taking place. Everything positioned me at the right time and was filling in requirements to where I just had to add additional things. And that's how it came to be in terms of me with the secondary degree, was that because I had so much from my other schools, that transferring those and then adding a few additional courses allowed me to get that second degree. And because I already had to take some courses to transfer back, do you see this expansiveness here, what I'm talking about in terms of just a multi-trajectory type of experience here, where I had these integrations and then it was meant for me to go to these different places because there were divine assignments, divine rendezvous. So that path was not linear. And each time I had to allow the path to expand in what may seem like a deviation or a detour, so to speak, it was a requirement because it aligned me at the exact time. When I ended up leaving my job and school to go on to Bible college a semester earlier, it synced me up with the right position and individuals that if I hadn't actually did that move then, that would not have come into play, because the position I ended up getting at the college was something they only hire individuals for every 4 years, because once they get someone in that role, they expect them to be there for that duration of time. When I synced up, the person who was in place that was going to be graduating was there to train me in the role during that time. But if I actually wouldn't have made the move at that time and followed the guidance, that would have already been filled, because that would not be a position that could just be out in the open. So you have to have someone in that position. So there's a lot that comes into play. And the reason why I'm emphasizing this for, individuals to understand is that when you have a very evolutionary path and you're called to something much more expansive, you're part of the pioneer work that is bringing in something newer for where we are in humanity and how humanity is going to be evolving. You have to live certain different experiences in order to be able to share. And so, again, my experience of living multi-trajectory types of that type of experience, it's been something that has been such a part of my journey for so long. But at each new phase of evolution, each new juncture, there's always a new alignment, always another alignment to see what is this expanding to. And because I have the background and the experience with this, I'm aware of when that's happening, even when I don't know exactly how that's going to fully play out. But I have enough awareness around it to say, I feel like I'm at this juncture here, where as I'm headed here and as I'm doing this, something else is presenting itself. And it could be that I'm going to swing back around to it, or it's something that needs to be done before I do this specific thing. So you have to be open, you have to be surrendered to the process, but you have to accept that these newer alignments are not going to be shaping up the way they traditionally have been, right? So again, sharing these different experiences with you so that you can have that awareness. And it's a multi-trajectory awareness that different levels of the path may call you forth to do different things. And then there could be some initial integration, all right? And if you need further assistance with navigating your multi-trajectory path, then I'm definitely available for that. I have resources as well. Make sure that you check within the description so that you can learn more and be able to start this journey the right way, because most of you will already start to realize that you've been on this journey for quite some time, right? But not understanding what this is all about and how you are called to this multi-mission purpose and multi-mission type of life that is going to give you fulfillment on levels that you can't even imagine. And I know some of you are thinking, how if I have children, how does this work out with their schooling and different things? Trust me, everything will work out. And that's a conversation for another uh, experience, another rendering from me, because I had to go through that process of kids, and the whole education piece around that. But that led me to another extensive path with education. And that's why my journey, I'll say this before wrapping up here, my journey with education has been so multidimensional, multi-trajectory. That's why I have my own education systems that help individuals with this type of initiative. And when we live in an online world in terms of the digital era dominates. So there's so many different options, things that can be done remotely that may not require you to have to do all this traveling for certain things, like my experience had been. And what's interesting, I'm going to share this, is that when I had to make that move a semester earlier than planned, it aligned me to actually secure um, a work study position for distance education. And so my whole path started opening up to so many different levels. And then all that I do today in the education system, and then how I had to navigate with my kids and different levels of education, it just expanded me, that I didn't know that that was what I was going to be doing, because it was the missions within the missions. It was the details and the journeys within the journeys that I got to look and identify. Again, going back to the multi-trajectory, there were multiple paths of things that were being carved out that at a later time I could see, oh, this is what was taking place. And this is why I had to be so entrenched in these different levels of institutions and studies and distance learning education and doing work online and doing all these different things because of what was queuing up. And then the same with living, the same with these different types of experiences. It opened me up to see the expansiveness of the mission that I was here for, and able to help prepare others like yourself to understand that you're going to be called to different things, and your livelihood indeed can take on a very different shape. So just be mindful and open for these new paths that will present themselves, that are going to be integrating, weaving themselves. It's like having a braid. They start out as individual strands, and then you are roping them in together. So just be mindful for that. So I hope that this has been empowering, and you feel a sense of higher purpose and higher connection, seeing things from a different vantage point of how you can accomplish a very expansive mission and not feel that you have to sacrifice one thing for the other. Things will present themselves. Certain things that you felt were going to be the bigger part of your purpose, that may shift to where it's not as expansive as you thought. Something that maybe you thought you were going to do a degree in, you maybe end up getting a certification. And something that you were going to possibly get a certification in, maybe you get a degree in that area, or you have a sense of a higher calling to that purpose. A place that you thought was going to be your primary place to be for living, it could be that another place presents itself, and that one just is one of your places that you reside. So again, it's going to be different for everyone. And I've used some examples, but all of what I shared may not apply to you in terms of those physical experiences, but it's just the idea and the awareness, I should say, of being open to the paths that are presenting themselves, that are all a part of your experience, and you'll be able to accomplish all of what you're here to accomplish and even more. Right. So I'm wishing you the absolute best. I look forward to being back with you soon. Take care and stay blessed.